Okay, guys, we are going to take a deeper look at what it means to do the quotations, the paraphrases, and the summaries. I will make sure to link in the down bar another video for you to watch about quotations, paraphrases, and summaries. But as you remember, quotations is taking somebody's exact words and putting it in quotation marks. Paraphrases is taking somebody's words and then putting it into your own words, and it being the same length. A summary is something that's very long that we put into our own words that's much shorter. So let's take a look at the topic I have here. The topic I have is junk food and obesity. From my topic, I come up with a question that we did a few days ago, and this question is usually a should question or a does. So my question is, should schools require healthier options, meaning healthier eating options? And then I come up with a thesis statement, and this is going to guide all of my research, all of the sources I find, and all of my responses. My thesis statement is schools should ban all junk food. So that statement right there is going to be what everything that I write about talks about, okay? And we will work on these continuously because these will grow to be longer thesis statements over time. But right now we need to just have one sentence that answers our focus question. So one of the first things that we have done is we have looked up websites. So I pulled up a website here from NBCnews.com. You'll notice the title is First Lady of the United States proposes ban on junk food marketing in schools. So looking at this, I know that it's going to be a pretty good website for what I'm talking about. So let's go ahead and read the first paragraph together. It says, First Lady Michelle Obama stepped up to the pressure Tuesday against companies selling junk food to students, announcing a new government proposal that would ban advertising of sodas and unhealthy snacks in public schools. This is our introduction paragraph, right? Usually we don't use anything in the introduction as one of our quotes, paraphrases, or summaries, because this is just introducing the material that they will be talking about. We want to hear the specifics and the main ideas. So let's continue. The new USDA rules would phase out the advertising of sugary drinks and junk food on vending machines and around campuses during the school day and set guidelines for other in-school promotions, from banners hung in hallways to sponsored scoreboards on school football fields. Okay, great. This is something we can use. So let's go ahead and copy and paste this into our document as a quote. So if we remember quotes, we use quotation marks around them because this is somebody else's exact words. And then we make sure to include the author's last name and usually the page number. But since this is a website, we don't need a page number. So let's look and see if we have the author's last name here. I don't know if I see one. Do you see one? Sometimes websites will have it all the way down at the bottom, and in fact it does. So here's our author, Maggie Fox. So in here, instead of saying last name, we say Fox. So what we want to do now is we want to respond to this. We want to either add our thoughts, our ideas, our comments, our responses, any examples, or any questions that we have about this. So let's start by just responding to this, by putting it into our own words. So we can start by saying something like, in other words, and then what we would do is take this entire section of text and boil it down to the main points. So in other words, junk food would not be advertised in schools. Now let's add a little bit more to that. Let's add some examples. So now we can say, for example, schools would not be able to sell soda during lunchtime. And now we can add our thoughts to this too. We can say, I agree with this because it is not necessary to allow students to eat unhealthy foods. We should only serve foods that are healthy to our bodies. So now here we have our quote with the citation. We have, in our own words, we have an example, and we have whether or not we agree or disagree at the end, all in one little section, so that when we use this part for our essay, we can just plug that into one of our body paragraphs. We're already prepared. Okay, so this is a quote. Let's go ahead and type that in there. Now let's take a look at a paraphrase that we could do. Let's go back up to the top where we were first looking. Okay. Continues on by saying, our classrooms should be healthy places where kids are not bombarded with ads for junk food, Mrs. Obama said at the White House event. U.S. Agriculture Secretary Tom Vilsack said the new rules would eliminate marketing for products that cannot be sold in schools. If you can't sell it, you ought not to be able to market it, Vilsack said. He said companies spent $149 million a year marketing food and drinks to kids in schools. So if we take that part of the article, the U.S. Agriculture Secretary Tom Vilsack said the new rules, we can take this and turn it into a paraphrase. So let's start right here with the quote. And let's turn this into a paraphrase. Now, you don't need to actually write down the quote, but I want it to be on one page so it's easy for us to see. So we need the main ideas. So we have new rules for marketing. Let's highlight that so we don't forget what it is. And we have the $149 million a year, right? Both of those two things are really important to this part. So let's take our paraphrase and say $149 million dollars a year is spent on advertisements, using new words, synonyms, for junk food in schools. A number that would drop after the new rules are in place. Okay, so if we take a look at this, we have our $149 million, which comes up right here. And we have the fact that this would eliminate the marketing, which comes up right here. So here's our paraphrase in the end. Okay, so now we can delete this. And we still know that the person who said this is the same person as before, Fox. Okay, so now let's add our comments. For this one, we probably don't need to rewrite it in our own words like we did up here. And why wouldn't we do that? We wouldn't do that because we've already rewritten it. We've already paraphrased it once. We don't need to paraphrase again. So let's start by adding our comments. This is important because students should be able to attend school without seeing advertisements for unhealthy foods. Okay? If these advertisements stopped, students would be better able to eat healthier foods. Two sentences here. We have our opinion and we have cause and effect. What would happen if what is said by Fox became true? Okay, so now we have an example of a quote and a paraphrase. Now let's take a look at summary. Now remember, we take summary for longer passages that we make much, much shorter. So let's read a little bit further on. Mrs. Obama made her physical fitness and healthier eating her signature policies when her husband took office in 2009. She announced the proposed rules on the 4th anniversary of her Let's Move childhood obesity program. The hope is to normalize healthy eating and regular exercise for kids, she said. So for them, the norm will be fruits and vegetables and not chips and candy, she said. So hopefully in the grocery market, they will be begging us for items from the produce aisle instead of from the snack aisle. It's the next step in a process started back in 2006 by former President Bill Clinton's foundation, which was worked with beverage companies to limit school drink sales to water, unsweetened juice, and low-fat and non-fat milk, flavored and unflavored, in elementary schools and middle schools, with the addition of diet and sports drinks in middle schools. Advocacy groups have been pushing to limit unhealthy snacks and the ads promoting them for years. So let's take this whole section, which is very long. Let's start with the quote again. And let's make it much, much shorter. So here are the things that we need to know. Mrs. Obama made physical fitness and healthier eating her signature policies. Okay, so we know that that's really important. So let's delete everything in between. We also know that her policy was called Let's Move. We also know that it's important to talk about healthy eating and regular exercise for kids. Right here we have some examples that are very specific. We don't need that in a summary. We just need the general ideas. So if we take a look here, we also know that former President Bill Clinton had a similar agenda, a similar policy. So we can delete all of this information. Now if we take all of this, we can make a summary out of it. Remember, we want to use our own words and our own grammatical structure, but we want to use the same ideas. So maybe we could say, just like Bill Clinton limited sodas in schools, Michelle Obama developed a policy for physical fitness and healthy eating. The goal of both of these policies was to get kids to eat healthy and exercise. Once again, this comes from the same article by Fox. So now we have all of this main idea into one summary with two sentences. Much shorter. And now I went ahead and added my final response to this, but now we can see the difference between a quote, a paraphrase, and a summary. Each of these represents the author's idea in a different way. Each of these represents your own idea, and that's the important difference here. This is about the author, this is about you. This is how you can add to what we've already said.